Jason Quitt, my friend. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
And we had an amazing little discussion last night, so we decided to do this interview really quickly. And we were talking about your latest book that you just wrote, and I found that very fascinating. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that book?
Sure. The book I wrote is called Gates of the Anunnaki, and my research is based on ancient mysticism, astrotheology, and when I started to look into the Sumerian texts, Sumerian tablets, especially like the Descent of Inanna, the Herds of Nanna, and the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, I found that there was very interesting allegorical motifs in there that were found in later teachings from all over the world, and it even ends up in our Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. So I found it very interesting, and there's a hidden sacred geometry code of numbers, a sequence of numbers that repeats itself in these ancient tablets. And once you decipher this code, it's basically what Tesla described as the secrets of 3, 6, and 9, and it goes into the blueprint of heaven and earth. So it gives a numbering sequence that nobody from 5,000, 4,000, or even earlier, 6,000 years ago, should have any knowledge on. So the Sumerians had a very deep understanding and knowledge of the stars, of using allegories and myths to talk about the cycles of time and stars, and they also use numbers to divide the heavens and the earth. So the book basically touches on all fields, from sacred geometry to mysticism to even conspiracy of hiding information and only allowing initiates to understand these stories if you had the secret keys to unlock a different meaning and story out of these tablets.
Because a lot of people have this weird version of what the Anunnaki are. People think that the Anunnaki were physical beings, but just like you mentioned, it was allegorical, it was metaphorical. Just like a lot of scholars and researchers have looked into the Bible and they realize that it's allegorical, it's not meant to be a literal translation. Is that really what we find as far back with the Sumerian tablets? And one on top of that, how old are the Sumerian tablets, and do the Sumerian texts predate the oldest religion in the world, which is Hinduism?
Well, just to answer that question is, in ancient Sumeria, they talk about the first cities, which is Eridu and Uruk. And if you date those to what they're dated, and they found these archaeologically as well, so they can be dated. The city of Uruk, for example, which is known as the first city of civilization, which was founded with the patriot god Inanna, which later became Ishtar. That city was dated around 4,500 BCE. So that is 6,500 years old, that city. Now, if you go back to Eridu, that even predates Uruk. So it's the first city right at the southern edge of the Persian Gulf in Mesopotamia. And this goes back to about 5,300 BCE. So you do find clay cylinders, these little stamps that they would put on different things. And these are the earliest representations of the gods, which means that even back then, going back 6,000, 7,000 years or more, they've found, even to before Sumeria, or the Sumerians, the Obaid culture that lived there, they found these clay stamps that definitely show theological, mythological gods established going back to the Neolithic period, which would be about 8,000 years ago. So it's all the same area, and it all follows the same pattern of these gods. Now, as allegorical, these gods, they were personifications of natural forces. They were personifications of a hierarchy of creation going right from the source, which was the Apsu and Tiamat, which is the abyss, the dark waters, the chaos, the void, darkness. And it's from this state of nothingness, or this void of eternity, that the spark of light came, which is Anshar and Kishar. And this is the primeval, heaven and earth. And then from there, you get Anu and Ki, which is Anu is the god of the heavens, and Ki is the goddess of the earth. And when they come together, they have children. And it's through the children of Anu and Ki we get the term Anunnaki. And so, are they physical beings that walk the earth? If you read the ancient texts, they talk about them in a personified way, but they also talk about them as these natural forces. For example, like if you go to the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation story, it talks about how Marduk kills Tiamat, and he rips her in two, and she becomes the heaven, and she becomes the earth and all creation. So the entire universe is basically half the body, or the full body of Tiamat. So when you're talking about something of that scale, how can that be a physical person? They're talking about natural forces, and this is, so if you actually read the text, it's very difficult to actually see it as an ancient alien thing, and you start to see it more as a personification of the hierarchy of creation. And I know that in the community that we're in, people are accustomed to the word Anunnaki from Zecharia Sitchin. And so most people that know the Anunnaki, they come from that translation of Zecharia Sitchin of the physical beings and gods coming from another planet, coming to Earth. And his source material, if you read some of those source materials like the Atrahasis, the Enuma Elish, when you read those translations from scholarly sources from different universities, it tells a completely different story than what he's translating. If you read those two, if you read those two things of the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish, they're two different creation stories. So, which is the correct one? And that's the thing that you'll find with Sumerian text, is that there isn't one common creation myth, creation story. They change over the years. So just to pick one and then make an interpretation of it doesn't give justice to all the others that are available. So, for example, if you look at the Anunnaki like Utu, which is later known as Shemesh, the sun god, he's the god of the sun, he's the sun, right? If you look at Nana, Nana is the moon. It says that he is the god of the moon. So you have all these different Anunnaki who are very specifically defined in the ancient texts, like Ishtar is the morning star, which is Venus, but in her other form she could also be Sirius, which rises as the star of Bethlehem in the winter solstice. So they take on different roles. And if you look at the ancient texts, we always hear about the planet Nibiru. They came from Nibiru and things like this. But in the text, when it does mention Nibiru in the ancient text, it specifically talks about planets that are crossing, or it refers to them as Mercury or Mars or Venus. So when you say the word Nibiru, it means a planet in our solar system is crossing each other in their orbits. So the Sumerians were, they created the zodiac, they created mapping the heavens, they were the earliest civilization to map the stars. So it would make sense that all this information has a relationship to the gods, to the stars in an allegorical sense.
Yeah, pretty much everything that you just described that's shown and that is translated in the Sumerian tablets is also found within Christianity. You also have the morning star in Christianity. Jesus even refers to himself as the morning star. I think in the book of Revelation, I believe maybe it's not the book of Revelation. Somebody calls him the bright and shining morning star.
Yeah.
And which I think that it may be more plausible, since a lot of this is about sun worship. You know, a lot of the religion, that's kind of the basis of the entire thing, is sun worship. They're worshiping the sun.
Yeah.
Some religions worship the moon, others the stars, you know. I think that maybe the morning star might actually, and I'm sure several people would disagree with me on, but I'm just putting it out there. Morning star might be the sun in the sky, right? Because it comes up in the morning, sets at night. And I think that it's what was the Bible? What did the Bible translate Lucifer into? Halal bin Sharar. In an older version, it was Halal bin Sharar.
Okay.
Well, Halal bin Sharar means son of the morning and son of dawn and son of dusk. So it's like, well, and then that was translated to morning star, and then they inserted Lucifer in there as like a mistranslation. So it's like, well, maybe they're talking about the sun here. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Well, it is the solar mythos, and there is 3 suns, actually, or 3 crossing points. You have, and I'll go back to the mysticism of Egypt, because it's easier to talk about that. It's when the sun dies, it goes into the western horizon. So it's like the dawn sky. It's Amon-Ra. So it's the death and dying, the old, the elder, going into the western horizon, going to the journey of the underworld. And then, or the Osiris, it's the death of Osiris. So he travels into the underworld. And then the rising sun, which is Horus. So that's why Horus is a child. It's the new sun in the morning. So he rises out of the eastern mound, and as he travels up to the Most High, he becomes the falcon. And that is the highest God, because it's directly above you. So it's the strong, fully formed adult God in their vitality. And then from there, they start to age, become wise, and prepare themselves into their death. And something else with the morning star, which is really interesting, many ancient cultures, they deified Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky. And what's very interesting about Sirius is that it disappears 70 days out of the year. So for 70 days of the year, you don't see it. It goes into the underworld. And Sirius in the Egyptian pantheon was Anubis, who was the god of the dead, right? And the god of mummification. So how many days do they prepare the body for mummification? 70 days, right? So so Anubis is preparing the body in mummification for 70 days to enter the underworld. And it's a complete allegory for the star Sirius going into the underworld for 70 days. So everything is a reflection in this. So absolutely, the solar mythos of Jesus is that. It's a solar mythos. It's the sun on the cross of the zodiac.
Right, being crucified in the sky, and then setting in the tombs in the bowels of the earth for 3 days, and then rising again, the summer solstice. And
there's a lot of symbolism here. Even if you want to go even further down the rabbit hole, you go. Actually, I don't want to go further down the rabbit hole. I don't want to scare people.
Now go forward down the rabbit hole. Let's do it, Jason.
Well, the 20 Golgotha. Sorry, my Hebrew is a little out of date, but basically it's the place where Jesus was crucified, and it translates to the skull. And the skull has 22 bones in your head, so your skull has 22 bones. The last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is number 22, and it's the Tau. And the Tau is made up of three. It's made up of three vavs, and vav translates to nail, and it's the number 6. The value of the nail is 6. So you have so Jesus is crucified with 3 nails. He's the cross, it's the 22, and the nail is 6. You got 6, 6, 6, you know?
Wow.
And it's the number of the sun. So like I said, what I'm talking about now is I know it's taking you all on a leap, but the thing is that there's the literal translations of biblical text in Sumerian, Egyptian, but there are secret societies and secret orders that are have the keys to unlock certain teachings that come with these texts, and they're extremely deep. So, you know, we grow up reading these stories as like a literal translation, but then you start getting initiated into different things where they say, okay, this is the astrological cycle of the sun, and it's going through the phases of the equinoxes and solstices. It's going through the 12 houses, the 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel. And so each one is defined. And then once you start to gain that information, suddenly the texts are a blueprint of creation itself. Like, it really teaches you the basic structure of cycles of time, when to harvest, when to plant your seeds, when you can't plant, you know. So it's very very deep is all I can say. It's a rabbit hole that just keeps going.
Yeah, have you ever read the Freemasonic Bible?
A long time ago.
It's a very interesting Bible because it's like the interlude and the preface of it like explains more than the entire Bible. Basically, explain
like the harem of Bith, the grand builder and the architects.
Like a lot what all their symbols actually mean,
Yes.
and like and it gives you like a brief breakdown of all that, which is I think really interesting, the Freemasonic Bible, because people get these symbols and everything's so confused. They're like, oh, it's satanic, it's blah 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 blah, but it doesn't mean any of that.
Well, there's a reason for that. Okay, there's a reason that certain societies or the public demonize certain things. And it's a way to keep the knowledge away from the people. So if you don't want people to understand something or know something, you say, that's evil, don't go there, don't look, because you're going to go to hell, or it's sinful, or this or that. And, well, it depends on who you're getting information from, because I'm sure you can have some bad sources. But to create this kind of repulsion for information, it's a method used by very early priestcraft to make sure the secrets are kept.
Yeah. So to touch back on the Anunnaki here really quickly, so we went through Anu being heaven, and I believe that you mentioned when we were talking before that Enki is very heavily resembles Jesus within Christianity. Could you speak on that? And then also what role Enlil's was too, because a lot of people think that Enlil was more of a satanic, like devil figure, and then also you have Marduk as well that people think is like the evil guy, and all that. So could you comment on that, please?
Sure. Well, it's different times. Like, for example, Enlil was the patron god, and Enlil is the god of the air. He was the patron god of Babylon first. And through the story, the creation story, Marduk basically becomes the supreme god and usurps Enlil. And so then they were worshiping Marduk. But Enki, which is a really interesting character because they always look at him as like the savior. He's the one who told the ancestor of Gilgamesh how to build the ark and save the people, just like the Noah story. So Enki is always looked at the person that has humanity's back. But if you look at Enki and the symbols of Enki, he'll be having water coming out of his arms and with fish. He was like the first fish god. And he represented Pisces and Aquarius. And the ancient gods or the demigods or the priests, they would wear these fish outfits. So they'd wear these fish hats and fish capes, fish clothing, to honor Enki, which was the fish god. And the reason it was the fish god or the water god, and Enki is the god of water, it's because he represented the wet season. So he was the winter solstice in Samaria, where that's the wet season. So everything would be inundated. And when you come to Jesus, the first cult of Jesus, they would have the symbol of the fish.
Right, the Jesus fish.
The Jesus fish. And so he was the fisherman. He was the god of fish. And that was the first original cult of Jesus, was him as this fish, or using the symbolism of fish. So he stands in that archetype, and it also relates to the precession of the zodiac, where before Jesus, we were in the age of Aries, which is the age of the ram. And so you have ram symbolism everywhere in ancient Mesopotamia, Israel, Egypt, a lot of altars with rams and ram's horn. That's where you get the shofar from. And then when you're moving out of that into the new religion, which is Christianity, it goes from the zodiac of Aries into Pisces. And Pisces is the fish. So and if you even go before that, before Aries, and go into the Egyptian religions, it was all about the bull, Apis the bull, Osiris the bull. And this has to do with Taurus, the age of Taurus. And so, when in the Bible they take the golden calf and they destroy it, it's symbolism of the end of the age of Taurus, which is Egypt, into the age of Judaism, which is the ram, Aries. And then when Jesus came and Christianity was founded, that was them entering into the age of Pisces, which is the age of fish. So everything has this cosmic alignment to it it's pretty amazing. And there's always a positive and negative figure or character. Like you would get Enki and Enlil, and they say Enlil was the bad one because Enlil was tasked to kill humanity, basically, and Enki was the one against it and saved humanity. So that you got these two characters, but also Set and Horus. You have that counter as well, and it has to do with the seasons. So at the beginning of the season, you have the gods of nature, which everything gets watered, the plants grow, the gods of vegetation like Osiris, and then, or Ishtar, which is the goddess of fertility. So during that time of the year, plants grow. And then Shemesh comes along, which is the god of the sun, or Set, and they cut down the crops. The sun is too hot, the water dries, it becomes like a desert condition, so everything dies, or it's being killed by the sun. So it takes on this kind of negative adaptation. And so you have pictures of cylinder scrolls of Shamash with like a knife, like cutting down Ishtar, the barley and the wheat, because it's time for harvest. So you always have these kind of characters going one over the other, but it all has to do with the ages, the stars. Even Horus is an asterism of Ophiuchus, which stands on the back of the scorpion. So you have all these opposites, but it's a very deep rabbit hole. And I had to, I'm on my third book now. It's over 600 pages of this stuff, and I'm nowhere near finished.
Yeah, it does get really deep, and I think it's pretty safe to say that it seems like, going back to the Sumerian times, everything since Sumeria has been a regurgitation and rebranding of what they practiced back then, and then it's been turned and just changed just slightly, and then turned into something different with new names of people and different names of people, but all symbolizing almost identically the same thing.
That is the profound discovery, is that once you strip everything away and just leave what the information is, this underlying knowledge that's there comes directly from Sumerian culture. We don't know where it came before. Did it come from the Ubaid? Did it come from a people that came from the northern Kush mountains? We don't know exactly where the information came from. We just know that it's there at a very early time in history, and that these myths and stories, they remain the same. The themes and allegories remain the same, but the characters and the locations change. And I always like to tell people it's where we're at today is like 6,000 years of broken telephone, as in the original intention of this information has been completely lost only to a handful of people, but the handful of people, they kind of keep it close to their chest because they want it to kind of continue forward without being changed or adulterated in any ways. For example, like the Old Testament, the Hebrew version of the Bible, a rabbi has to sit there and write every single word by hand. And if they make one mistake in the copying of this, they have to throw the whole Torah out. So this is the reason is that the Torah today is the exact same Torah that's 3,500 years ago. Not a single letter has changed in the Torah because they believe it's the Word of God. But when you get into Christianity, there are many translations, many people that wrote different parables, many people that wrote different stories, and during the First Roman Empire, when they took all the different versions of the Bible, not only was the Bible heavily edited to suit whatever that was, but most of it never even made the cut into the Bible. So that's where you get the Nag Hammadi library, and we're still finding different variations of these texts. So I would just say about 2,000 years ago, the text went from you can't change a single letter because the information is so important, to we're going to edit it to make it digestible for the Roman Empire.
And that way we can add things into it to fit our narrative for, controlling people. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that really the Roman Empire just created the entire New Testament and invented Jesus. So it's like, it does seem like a really big regurgitation after regurgitation. It's sort of like Ufology in a way. I mean, Bill Moore up in front of the MUFON conference in 1989 saying that if you strip away all the fluff from Ufology, you get the story of Paul Benowitz. And we know what Paul Benowitz was all myths and disinformation given to him directly from military officials, Air Force, AFOSI agents, and the NSA and agents.
I always tell people with the Paul Benowitz thing, I said the government wanted him to believe in UFOs. Mm-hmm. All right, so there wasn't a cover-up. It was a cover-up of something else because they didn't want their technology known.
That's exactly right.
But to do that, they pushed the whole thing of there are these UFOs, there are aliens, so they are not accountable. So when they're saying the government is hiding UFOs and aliens, it's actually the government telling us, no, that isn't a UFO and alien, so that they're not accountable.
That's right. That's exactly right, my friend. I'm glad you get it as well. I've done many deep dives into Paul Benowitz. My audience is very, very familiar, but that's what it seems like it is. And the government putting out and making people privately believe in aliens and that these UFOs are alien craft, all the while it's top secret military technology, and they get other people talking about it. I mean, how many people in the community in the early 80s did Paul Benowitz influence? He influenced like everyone, John Lear, Bill Cooper, Linda Moulton Howe, like all these people that he would go out and talk to that was a part of this community, and he would tell all of his stories to, and then those people would regurgitate the stories that he told to everybody else, and they popularized the whole thing, right? It's not about who came out with it first or did it first, it's about who popularized it. And then you got Bill Cooper talking about the freaking contract between aliens and the government in this base in New Mexico and all. It came directly from Paul Benowitz. And Paul Benowitz got all of his information from the disinformationalists like the Air Force and the NSA that was tapping directly into his computer and broke into his house and replaced his computer with the NSA modified computer to make him believe he was in contact with aliens.
I'll just gonna make it very, very, very simple for everybody watching. The reality that we live in and know is the psyop. Okay? And that's not a joke. Once you understand that everything we've been taught is basically given to us to maintain this ideological path of the human race, and it's not just in the USA or Canada, this is a worldwide ideology that is kind of being tapped into us, which changes our behavior, it changes the way we see ourselves in nature, and it stops us from, I would say, acquiring certain knowledge. And once we tap out of that psyop, suddenly you see there's fundamental reasons that they're trying to keep things from us, and they are very intelligent and very smart and very good at what they do. So yeah, it's all a psyops.
I agree, absolutely, Jason. Thanks so much for coming on my show and having this discussion with me. Can you let people know where to find you online if you'd like to plug any social medias, or let people know where they can find your books as well?
Sure. They deleted my Facebook and Instagram. But I opened a new one since. You can find me at Jason Quitt on there. I'm mostly active on Twitter, which is Jason_Quitt. And my books can be found on Amazon. My new book is called Gates of the Anunnaki, which we discussed today. I also have a website where I sell the books, but I also sell rare gems and minerals, crystals, called thecrystalsun.com. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you very much. The links to all of Jason Quitt's information will be in the description of this video. Thanks so much for being here. Everyone, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, because we're going to have more interviews coming your way. All right. See you guys next time.